You actually don't have a problem with mean words. You don't have a problem with online watchdogs. You have no problem with any of these things because you yourselves do all these things. It's been a long day. Been a good day, though. Been a good day. I was thinking and reflecting about today's upload on the channel. And, you know, my personality is I like to have fun with things. I like to joke around. And, you know, that's part of my personality. I'm never going to change that. You know, the topics I talk about are serious, but I try to have fun with it. I try to project sort of an element of joy in the fight because I have joy in the fight, you know, and that kind of thing. And personally, I think that's a lot of what people like about what I do online, the people that subscribe to the channel and all that kind of thing. You know, they don't really get that kind of perspective too often when it comes to standard content. But anyway, but I was thinking about today's upload, and to be honest, it's a lot more nefarious than I gave it credit for. Because when you think about what the Gospel Coalition tries to accomplish with these kinds of articles that say, well, online pundits, online watchmen, that's bad, that's really bad. When you think about it, and they bring all these Bible verses to it to try to give it weight, the argument that they're making, or rather not making, it's a really bad misuse of Scripture. And in fact, I would say it's taking the Lord's name in vain because they want to apply unequal standards, unequal measures to themselves and to others. So they put all these Bible verses and they're trying to put you under this yoke, right? And they're saying, look, you have to obey these Bible verses in this way. And it's the very way that they don't obey the Bible verses, and it's not even a real interpretation. They're actually misapplying the Scriptures a lot of the time. And to try to put people under a yoke of your own rule book that you don't even follow, that actually doesn't come from the Bible, even though it has a veneer of Bible verses on it, that's actually pretty insidious when you think about it. That's very, very insidious. That's evil. And it's all in the service of protecting your own brand, which is so twisted when you think about it. A lot of people are seeing this. I'm not the only one. You know, I'll put out a funny video, whatever, but lots of people are seeing this. This is Jacob Brunton. He quote tweets the article, and he says, quote, "The church doesn't need online watchmen," says the established online watchman group. Yeah, because you think about it, like, Gospel Coalition is just an approved discernment blog. Like, the only difference between Gospel Coalition and another discernment blog is that this has a lot more traction. It started earlier in some cases. They have a lot of subscribers, and they have this sort of air of superiority. But really, we have to go by the, you know, essentially the Scripture. We have to compare what is said by the Gospel Coalition against the Scripture. And likewise, you should compare what I say against the Scripture. That's the only really legitimate measure that we can take these things by. He also says, Jacob Brunny says, for those tempted to deceive, it's no wonder the online world is such a threat. So he kind of switched around some of the words from that article. And he's right, because like one of the things about online watchmen that is probably very annoying to people who are trying to project, you know, sort of an air of superiority, or, you know, try to put forward social justice as biblical, is that there's an entire universe of online fact checkers checking what you say against Scripture. It must be very frustrating to have to deal with that all the time when you're pushing this narrative that's just fundamentally incorrect. And so, you know, a lot of people are seeing this. I saw another person, he said, so Gospel Coalition is the watchman telling us we don't need watchmen. Then who watches the watchmen? Or is Gospel Coalition saying that they're Batman and Justice League and everyone else is the pretend version? I'm not sure a more confused or internally conflicted, unaware post could be written. And that's very true. Like that's the kind of the point that I made. It's like, do you even know where you're writing this blog? Like, this is an online watch blog. And I know you're not as aggressive as some. Like, I think that might be the difference. Like, they think they're the Batman. They're the luxury version of an online watch blog. And the reason why you know they're legit is because they don't use mean-sounding words. We actually do use mean-sounding words, except you choose the right targets. Like, you can say whatever mean-sounding words you want against Donald Trump or against white people. Nobody bats an eye. But the minute I say a mean-sounding word against one of the made guys, all of a sudden people go insane. The minute I say a mean-sounding word against a person of color, all of a sudden people lose their mind. It's like you actually don't have a problem with mean words. You don't have a problem with online watchdogs. You have no problem with any of these things because you yourselves do all these things. The real ticket here is that there are made guys and you don't touch made guys. Everybody knows that. Like, if you've ever watched a mob movie, like, there are certain guys, the made guys, that you can't fight back against. You can't say anything to them. You got to go to the Godfather if you have a problem. And it's like, I'm not playing by those rules. This isn't the Mafia. That's why I think this came from J.D. Hall. And I know even just mentioning J.D. Hall is going to cause people to lose their minds. But here's the reality. I don't hate the same people you hate. You know, you're going to have to get that straight. Now, you don't like J.D. Hall. I'm not saying you have to. But I'm just saying, like, he had your guys' number a long time ago. He calls you guys the Latte Mafia. And the reason why he calls you the Mafia is not because you're big in machismo. It's because you operate like the Mafia, except the soy-laden version. That's the reality. Like, you got made guys. You can't touch the made guys. And anyone who touches the made guys gets whacked. Like, I remember, I'll never forget this. I was criticizing Eric Mason. And, you know, I had been doing it pretty relentlessly because he said some pretty outrageous things. And so I was going in. But the thing is, Eric Mason is one of these made guys you can't touch. And so Big Eva dispatched a leader in Acts 29 network. I'm not going to name him here. But they dispatched one of the leaders to try to get me to stop. And they try to give me they tried a whole bunch of different approaches. They started out with the big guns. Oh, you're sinning by doing this. And I said, okay, how am I sinning? And of course, he couldn't actually put his finger on it. It's just the tone. It's the tone, he said. And I said, okay, great. So you have to explain to me how my tone is inappropriate, yet Paul calls someone to chop their testicles off, and that's somehow appropriate. Jesus says it's better for someone to drown in the ocean, and that's somehow appropriate. You need to explain that one to me. And of course, he couldn't explain that to me. And so he tried that. He tried to talk about my career and how I wouldn't, get anywhere without, the approval of so-and-so and this and that. And I don't care about that stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I never was, maybe at one point I was looking for, to be promoted by the big dogs and stuff like that. But I saw how you guys operate. I don't want to be in the Mafia. You know what I mean? I don't want to be in the Mafia, especially the soy version. And so that's the thing about this article, man. Like, I was joking around about it, but it's actually pretty insidious because it's attempting to make something a sin that's not a sin. And the worst part is you're trying to make something a sin that's not a sin that you yourselves engage in. Listen, you want to stop online watchmen? You first. You delete your blog, you delete your accounts, and you know what? I'll consider it. But since I don't take orders from you, and since I don't put my standard of what's righteous and what's not from you, I'm probably not going to follow suit. But if you are so concerned about online watchmen and how they're not necessary and how it's a sin and how this and that and all these things, you should do the righteous thing, the holy thing, and honor your God and delete your account. Until you do, keep your mouth shut and stop trying to put me under a bondage of slavery. I'm not going to accept it because I'm a free man. And so are a lot of these other guys as well that you're criticizing.